Wolf gets a huge upgrade to $36. Yes, so we just saw an increase by an analyst from 32, which was already his goal, but he just raised it. All about this here in this video.
Welcome to the game, I'm the Wolf of Dubai.
Welcome to a brand new video. I'm trying to buy very early, very interesting company. As you know from my first videos back in the summer of last year, I bought a Wolf for $9. Here's the clip. If you look into the stock price, we were for a very long time like in the $3-4 range. And then we had the huge explosion of already 100%, okay? But I believe that is just the beginning. So, and since then, we are already at 25, 26, given the day, and this reminds me always that sometimes you can find beautiful companies, buy early, and then just ride them, okay? So if you're interested into that, make sure to follow me everywhere and make sure to follow my first channel where it's a brand new channel and where we are covering maybe the most undervalued data center company that makes something very specific. You have to check out the first channel to really understand why. And on the other hand, I would love to show you also extenddaytrading.com. As you can see, we start our months quite massively with 2 trades, Nvidia and Palantir, 2 things that run quite nicely today. So as you can see, that is something that is really interesting, right? Because we are doing everything for you. We buy the trades, we sell the trades. It's your account at Interactive Brokers, the biggest broker in the world. So check out, and we want to make between like 8 to 15% per month. So you can see how this compounded ends up being after a whole year. If this is interesting, make sure to schedule a call on the website before we're raising our joining fee, and let's dive in, because the new price target is essentially higher than the one before, okay? So Wolf is currently a $25, $26, $27 company, right? So we are running here on a fantastic result of already like 150% or more, and I think that there's still more to go because the bottleneck is real. We just talked about that Goldman said that the demand will absolutely be massive over the next couple of years for AI power. And if you're seeing this kind of price target, I always say, okay, how important is the price itself? Because it's more than 40% increase or potential here, again, on top of what we did already. So you have something that is very demand restricted, right? So you have like a lot of power needed for the huge amount of AI that being used. Now we just see a couple of chatbots, then we will see corporations will use more and more AI. So if this is something that you understand, then Wolf is maybe one of the best plays beside Iron and other things that we are covering on all of our channels. But I would love to show you a clip because the DNA of TeraWolf is actually exactly that.
All right, welcome back to The Big Skinny, and this is the part of the show that I get the most interested in because we get to tap the minds of industry experts to learn way more than we could from just reading an online post, an investor presentation, or a press release that could help us make an investment that makes us a lot of money. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome the CFO of TeraWolf, Patrick Fleury, to The Big Skinny. Patrick, thanks for joining us today.
Lou, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so listen, I want to start right where I kind of led to earlier, where people think AI is in a bubble. And I mentioned that the infrastructure build out is something that takes time. As you look at the opportunities in front of you, do you see it as a bubble? I mean, would you consider this a bubble, or how would you respond to critics that say it's a bubble and not a real verifiable growth trend?
Yeah, look, I can see why people might say that, but I have no hair because I've lived and worked in finance now for 25 years. So I have seen a couple bubbles. I've seen telecom, seen power in the early 2000s. I've seen energy in the 2010s. I think the really big difference, and I think you hit the nail on the head here, the difference particularly between the dot-com bust in the early 2000s and what people are talking about now is you have 5 or 6 of the most profitable companies in the world that are funding this build-out. Yep. Google, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, right? This is not, AOL scrapping together because they're cash flow negative, right? I mean, this is, very, very profitable companies. And I think to your point, look, are there potentially bubbles in certain parts of the ecosystem? Yeah, probably. But the part that we play in, which is building the infrastructure, getting the power to the actual hardware, there's just a dearth of foundational compute capacity. This is a new industry. It is very new hardware that's being used that generates a lot of heat that needs to be water cooled. So that's where we are focused on, again, filling that gap, because right now there is no foundational computer, very little. And within the next, 2 to 3 years, there will be a lot more, but still not enough to meet the needs of all of those big players. And then even beyond them, all the neo clouds, that are competing in that business as well.
Yeah, you said a few things. And one I want to put just an exclamation point on. I mean, you talked about these are the world's biggest tech companies spending, in some cases close to trailing 12 months of net income in investing in the infrastructure for AI, right? So as a CFO, how often do you say, you're not sitting around going like, oh, where do we spend our shareholders' capital unless it's a meaningful growth opportunity? So I think that's an important point. But then my question for you on that is just, you're talking about, we're still in the early innings of this. How many years do you think this persists till we get a demand supply balance of infrastructure, of power supply that can match the compute? Or is it one of those things that the more you bring online, the more usage you get, where you're always playing catch up?
So great question. I don't know the answer to that, right? But I think it's probably the latter, that right, like adoption will increase, and you can go back and look at that historically, right, with the internet. So I do think cost comes down, adoption increases, demand proliferates. I think that story is likely, but for us, again, there is so much demand out there from just those 5 companies alone that I think many of the peers in my sector that don't have deals, and anybody that has access to real power, like in the next 2 to 3 years, I think likely converts whatever they're using that power for.
So you see anything that they can pull forward from 2 to 3 years is so every megawatt that's available. I mean, Mike Alfred from IREN's board said that. He's like, look, every megawatt that's available is going to get consumed. So you see the same thing.
Yes and no. So yes and no, because all megawatts are not created equal. So what I mean by that is it depends on where you are regionally in the grid. Are you in, the Northeast like we are? Are you in Texas? Are you in California? Because while the United States in general is a great place to do business, the electricity grid and how energy moves is very different by state and by region. So,
along those lines, help me understand too, what's the benefit, the differentiator for TeraWulf being in the Northeast versus some other geographies that might be suboptimal?
Yeah, so we have a couple different advantages to that. Number one, again, you want to be sited where there is excess renewable or zero carbon power. We're located in upstate New York, in a part of New York State where there's about 5,000 megawatts of generation and only about 2,000 megawatts of demand. So there's a lot of excess power, namely coming from Niagara Falls, which is, I think, the nation's 3rd largest hydroelectric facility. That's 30 miles to the west of our site. So that's a huge advantage. Also, being, as I mentioned, these facilities and the chips that are used in them generate a lot of heat. So having a cooler ambient temperature outside allows you to convert megawatts into compute power more efficiently. Third, I think this company, my background, Paul, Kerry, Nazar, the whole management team, we have been focused on the power space for 25 to 30 years. We were a private power company before we became a Bitcoin miner, before we then became, a high power compute hoster building co-location.
So as you can see, the DNA of TeraWulf was always like power. Then they said, okay, how we can monetize power? Let's do crypto and mining. And then how we do that if something else is much more profitable. The AI needs so much power. Okay, so let's pivot. And this is what the great company does. They always pivot to something more successful, more better, more potential for bigger monetization, for more profits, for more margins. So let me know what you think, but I think it's a fantastic company. Do you own already some wolves, or are you just getting started? And check out xnDayTrading.com before we're raising our joining fee. And I see you tomorrow for a brand new video, because the grass is greener always on the other side.